Good Wednesday evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Carolinas Weather Group. And boy, has it been memorable. We've been having all kinds of computer issues, but we're finally going. Starting about 5 minutes late, but that's okay. We're going to wrap up Severe Weather Month with an amazing guest tonight. Mr. Gary England joins us from Oklahoma City, and Gary's going to tell us some stories about twisters and everything else out there in the Oklahoma City area. So, looking forward to having Gary on tonight. And it is April the 29th. This is the last Wednesday in April. So I hope you've enjoyed the severe weather talks that we've had all this month. And don't forget, if you missed anything or you want to go back and rewatch it, you can watch us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, or download our podcast from the Apple iTunes store. So we're looking forward to kind of concluding this and going on into May. And tonight we're going to top it off the best way that we can with Mr. Gary. So before we do that, a couple of housekeeping rules. This is a live broadcast. We do have a question and answer session. So if you have a question for Mr. Gary, go ahead and shoot it our way. You can tweet it to us, Facebook, or do it through the Q&A link as well. And like I said, you'll want to download this when we get it back up on iTunes. So this is going to be a very memorable show. So since we're starting a little bit late, I'm going to kind of cut introductions through the panelists because you know who everybody is. And I am going to introduce a good friend of mine. Joey and I was very honored to meet Mr. Gary England out at the Tornado Conference in Oklahoma City back at the end of February. And we asked Gary if he would come on and kind of talk about his history out there, and he graciously accepted. And Mr. Gary, you were the chief meteorologist at KWTV Channel 9 in Oklahoma City, and you are since no longer on TV, but doing a lot of things out there in Oklahoma City area. So, Gary, thanks for coming on tonight.
You bet. Happy to be here with you guys. It makes my day complete.
Well, we're glad we could complete your day. And Gary, you've seen a little bit of everything out there in the Oklahoma City area. We're going to kind of do this with a discussion tonight. I'm just going to kind of ask some open-ended questions, and Gary's going to go through that and just give us some great stories out there. So, Gary, tell us a little bit about your start, how you got into meteorology.
Well, I think to the people that get into meteorology, so often it's in the genes. You're born with that desire, that interest, and you just can't shake it. It's like the storm chasers. They got the chaser gene, and they can't get rid of it. So you can't help yourself. But used to be a guy on television by the name of Harry Volkman. Let me tell you, I always liked weather, even before that time in the 7th grade. In fact, I went and traded in I thought I could trade it back, but I went and bought a camera. My dad had a bread route, and this one Saturday he was gone, so I went and charged a Brownie Hawkeye camera, and it cost $16, and I quickly used it, and then of course it was a long day when he got back, because in those days $16 is a lot of money. He's pretty upset, but I like to take pictures of the clouds, which I got some great modest clouds from back when I was a kid, great stuff. But anyway, I occasionally chase storms with him. He'd drive toward the storms, and we'd have to deliver the rest of the bread. But Harry Volkman was on the air. Harry just retired a few years ago in Chicago, and Harry was then a very young man here in Oklahoma City, and I saw him on television, and I didn't know what he was. And we're at my grandma's house. Harry used to have a 15-minute weather show on Sundays. Can you believe that? 15 minutes. And Harry was there on the television. I'm in front of the TV, and I pointed at that TV, and I said, "Daddy, I want to be one of those." And my daddy said, "Well, what is he?" And I said, "I don't know, but I want to be one." So ever since 7th grade, I dreamed about being Harry Volkman on Channel 9, and I thought a lot about the Navy. I liked the ocean. There was a series called Victory at Sea, and so I thought a lot about the Navy. I thought a lot about girls because there weren't many girls in western Oklahoma yet, so you had to think about them. And so you very seldom ever got a date. But anyway, so I graduated out of high school at 17. My mama signed the papers. I joined the Navy, went to Navy weather school, and no girls, by the way. I figured there'd be a girl in each arm when you were in the Navy, but it didn't happen. And so that's kind of how it all rolled along. Went to the Navy, got out of the Navy, and then went to Southwestern State Weatherford for a half a semester before they ran me off. And then went to OU, got married. That's what saved me. And went to OU and got a degree in math and meteorology. And so it's been interesting. I've always wanted to do it, got a chance to do it finally. But I have to tell for the people that are listening, the ones you talk to, the 7th grade, how old are you? What are you, 10, 12, I don't know, 13? I didn't get a job in television until I was 30 years old. So it took a long time to realize that goal, but I always wanted to do it. Nobody'd hire me.
And Gary, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you've spent the entire career of your time out there in Oklahoma City. Is that correct?
At Channel 9, yeah. I was working in New Orleans as an oceanographer and a meteorologist and a civil engineer, if you can imagine that, for the offshore petroleum industry. A.H. Glenn was the company, and the company's still there. He's gone now, but he's great meteorology, great stuff. It was my real life PhD, because he was a mean rascal and he taught so much. But I was down there for 4 years, came back to Oklahoma, got a job on a radio station finally, and then one day the phone, and I tried to get on Channel 9. I tried to get on Channel. I've been to Amarillo. I've been all those places. Nobody would hire me, baby. But then one day the phone rang, and as a general manager at Channel 9, he just said, "Listen, I've heard you on the radio. You sound a little crazy, but I'd like to talk to you." So I went out there and did an audition, and darn if they didn't hire me. That shows miracles still happen.
That's right. That's right. Well, tell us this. How did you cover meteorology on the radio? I mean, we see all the time the TV Mets, but how was it different there on the radio? I mean, what did you have to do to kind of captivate your audience?
Well, I was a little crazy on the radio. Of course, this was a long time ago, and the radio station here was KTOK. Put in the first radio station, first radio station with a radar, an ABQ-10, 10-degree beam width, so you can tell you had a hurricane or an airplane. There's no way you could tell what you had with that thing, but they built a little booth up there, and they had an engineer who was going to run it. And I kept hanging around there because I didn't have a job, and but I knew they'd need me. Storm came up about 7 o'clock in the morning. Guy couldn't run it, couldn't do it. So I had me a job. It didn't pay very much. But, and the way I did it then is, this storm is moving southeast at 25 miles per hour. We'll approach the Oklahoma City area in 1 hour, blah, 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 blah. And it was pretty boring, you know. And so another guy and I got together, and he said, "We're going to teach you to laugh on the air." So he got me in one of the studios, and he'd do crazy stuff to just get me to genuinely laugh. And we invented a character called 805-pound thunder lizard. And so I'd go on the air and say, I went to work at 3 in the morning at that radio station, worked till about noon, and I had no maps. I had a teletype, and that was it. I would go to the FAA facility here in Oklahoma City, out in Bethany, and like at 3 in the morning or so, and go in there and take their maps that they had taken down and thrown down. And so usually I got maps that were 24 hours old. But that's how I got the information for my forecast. But I'd get on the air. If it was a nice day, I'd say, "Hey, folks, out there on Interstate 40, about mile marker 50, we had a report of an 805-pound thunder lizard." And people would stop at a gas station, whatever, and call in and say, "Yeah, I saw that too. I saw it too." And it was very big. And so we did crazy stuff. In July, clear day, 100 degrees. And everything's kind of quivering. The air's distorted due to the heat. And I came on the air and issued a tornado warning. I ran the beeps, the beep, 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 and then that got everyone's attention. I did it at drive time, about 10 after 5, and it got everyone's attention. Nowadays, you go to jail for that. I did that, and then when I came on, I just laughed and told them there was no tornado. But what was happening is that people were going to work, and places say, "You got to watch there. You got to listen to that guy here on the radio. He's pretty crazy." And same thing the general manager from Channel 9 told me when he called it. So the forecast was, early on, I was pushing it so serious. It's never that serious unless it's something significant in the weather. Most of the time, the weather's pretty good. So we did the 805-pound thunder lizard. The actual presentation was always very brief. We'll have sunshine at 80 today. The winds will be south at 40. And may blow you into Kansas, but it'll be a good day. Just little things like that. And so that's how I did radio. It was loose, and it was just fun. If it hadn't been for the fellow that helped me, Bob Reagan, I never probably would have made it, because he really loosened me up. He did crazy things. And so that's how I handled the weather. Early on, the first few weeks, I was pretty boring. I was only there a year, and actually they fired me 3 times during that year, because every time a certain season would pass, they figured they didn't need a weather guy anymore. It was a rough time in my life, I gotta tell you. But radio was fun.
And so after radio, it brought you to Channel 9, and tell us how it started out there at Channel 9 in the early days and to what it's grown into today.
Well, early on, I got out there. They didn't have a radar. They did have a fax machine, and they had a teletype. No office, just a desk up against a wall. So I get out there, and it was interesting to say the least, because I was used, because I'd worked for a guy in New Orleans that was exceptionally brilliant. He was able to share some of that with me. So I was pretty much of a mover and a shaker, and I knew what I wanted. And I thought I knew what had to happen. But there was just me and this gal that worked there, and she'd worked there a long time. She's quite popular, but she called me a high roller. Can you believe that? But anyway, you know, it we'd have a storm in those days, and get up the next morning and say, God, dude, I hope I didn't kill a bunch of people last night, because you didn't know the next day. Because in those days, the warnings were so bad, I could only warn you because it blew Henry's house away 5 miles away. So the warnings were really bad. It wasn't the people, it was just wasn't the equipment. And I'm sure that even though no one admitted it, the warning time was probably about -5 minutes on most tornadoes, except the daylight tornadoes. But my second year I went there in '72. In '73, there was a cold front coming down from the north, thunderstorms firing along it, tornado watches all along the front, you know. And I learned something in the Navy. They said always check your back door. So I flipped that radar to. By that time we'd purchased the radar. They purchased it right after I got there, and I flipped to the 50-mile range. And there was a storm blowing up about 35, 40 miles west of Oklahoma City by itself in advance of the front. So kept an eye on that, sent some storm trackers out there. And what we had in those days, we had ham radio operators. We gridded central Oklahoma off into 1 mile squares. And those guys, whichever the call, he said, I'm so-and-so at Alpha 22. We didn't know right where he was. He said, I have a condition 6 on the ground, northeast 35. I know he had a tornado on the ground, moved northeast 35. We had quite a system. But we sent some people out that way, and that storm grew, and it came in and hit Union City, Oklahoma. And it was they call it now they call it an F4, but it was an F5. I mean, it just leveled everything. Came in from the northwest and then turned a little more to the southeast. Broad daylight, and it was my first experience in storms. And that year, the following year, we had a bunch of tornadoes, and man, Oklahoma City was hit, I believe, 3 times that day. None of them really large, but they just kept hammering in. But all through this period, we said, what can we do? It was never, let's do something great. It was, how can we do this better? Because in the old day, 30 miles was about like that on the radar. And you look at that storm, you go, 1, 2, 3. It's 90 miles out, moving to 30. Be here in 3 hours. You just use your thumb, estimated the 30 mile per hour. Then we put a little strobe on there, run it out there, see how many miles it was. And gosh, it's really been fascinating. And finally got other radars. I heard that I could buy a satellite receiver in Germany, and this is in the early days of the satellites when the pictures still have some of the 8x10s. They were just as good then as they are now, as far as we can see highways on a 2-mile, half-mile resolution rapid scan. So we rented a line to Kansas City, tied into that computer system, did all kinds of things. I followed the research down at Norman. And a friend of mine called, said he worked down there, still works down there, said, you got to come look at this. So we looked at that big Doppler radar they brought in, that dew-line radar, the antenna was about 30 some feet across, and it was designed to pick up missiles and enemy aircraft. And so the guys down at Norman, guys and gals, were converting it to use for warnings. So it looked like to me from the results of their research after a few years that Doppler was the deal. So I talked the owner of the station, Mr. Griffin, into putting up, I think it was $250,000. In those days, that was a ton, man. So just based on my excitement and my belief, he put that money up. I figured I'd lose my career over the deal. And when we got it, I was sure I was going to lose my career. Got Enterprise, I call it Enterprise Electronics. And he's the guy that sold us the black and white radar. And I said, can you build us a Doppler radar? He's real Southern, okay? He said, well, Gary, I never have thought of that. So anyway, like 2.5 years later, we ordered it in '78, got it in '81, and it looked like scrambled eggs, man, because there were no nice computers tied to it to unfold the velocities, and the fold velocity was 32 miles an hour. And I remember looking at that and thinking, my career's over. This guy spent $250,000, and it looks like we bought a bunch of scrambled eggs. But they quickly came out with FFT, fast Fourier transform processor, and that was just pattern recognition and converted to another type of Doppler. All this time, just interesting things were happening, new cameras, better chase teams. And so it's been an incredible 40 years. We've been involved with lots of stuff, lots of exciting things, and some things that weren't too exciting. But, by the way, go ahead.
I was just going to, you were commenting back in the early 70s, the warning process was 5 minutes too late. Talk about how, in your opinion, how the warning process has maybe got better, maybe the same, or what's your thoughts on the current warning process?
Well, it's so much better nowadays, obviously. I think at least the only weather service I follow is one here in Oklahoma City or in Norman, and they really make the media people's job easy because they're really good at the warnings. The SPC is really good at outlooks, weather and updates, and weather services good on what they think is going to happen. And so they really make it easy for you. But, once it starts, excuse me, once it starts, then it falls in the hands of the television meteorologist. It's just that's how it works, because the people turn on TV and listen to radios and such. And at that point, we've listened to all this information coming to the weather service and what's coming up. And here comes the first warning. When the first warning comes, that's when we just take over, because we don't have time to be looking at all those things, and we just run it from there. But to answer your question, I think the warning process, at least here in Oklahoma City, is quite good. I think the thing that's wrong with it are some people that are on television that shouldn't be on television, and they scare people, and they holler, and they scream, and they hoot, and it's not a game. And I'm not talking about chasers. I'm talking about people on air and some other markets too. It's it's serious. People die with these big tornadoes, and they have life-shattering injuries, like a 2x4 through the neck, and survive. And so it's serious business. And so I get a little offended when I see people making it sound like a game and scaring and frightening people. But the process, I think the warning process is good. In the weather service, at times we probably don't deliver the information as well as we should on the air, but it's not bad at all. But you look at May 3rd, 1999, we lost about 40 people, and we knew the tornado, the weather. The first tornado touched down 100 and some miles southwest of Oklahoma City about 4 p.m. It didn't get to Oklahoma City until 7. We had a 3-hour warning, so everybody knew about it. And we still had 40 people killed. And by the way, for those listening, I know down in the southeast, largely extent the kids are wearing helmets now with a strap, shatter-resistant goggles. There's a lot of proof, a lot of evidence that says that saves their eyesight, saves the brain injuries. About 20% of the injuries are brain injuries, from what I've read. So it just you got to make sure that happens. But guys, at what point I've gone back to them, trying to cover too many subjects here. But you keeping up with this, Scotty?
Hey, listen, we will touch all the topics you want to. We're here. We're a captive audience, sir. Okay. You just talk about what you want. That's fine.
Alrighty. Well, the warnings, like I said, the process I think is good. The warnings get out. You got 40 people killed in '99, though, and several hundred injured. And of course, we had about 58 tornadoes in our broadcast area. Now, you picture that, baby. You've had some of those outbreaks in the southeast. You know what that's like, and they just kept happening. I think we had 8 supercells that produced all those tornadoes. It was a terrifying day. But you fast forward to May of 2013, and the advanced information from the Weather Service, the SPC, all is great. It's in advance, and it's on target, and everybody can see it because we all have the same maps. Hey, it's right there. We're going to have tornadoes, central Oklahoma, maybe other parts of the state, but our concern mainly is central Oklahoma. So we kept all of our crews home that day because it looked like it might happen. And it did, the 19th and the 20th, and then again at the end of the month. But it's just, what bothers me is that we lost 40 people in '99, and then we have this tornado now in 2013, and we've been telling people, in many cases for several days, this is coming. Make your plans. How are you going to pick up the kids? Are you going to let them go to school? Look at the plan where you take shelter on the way to work and from work and wherever, and all that stuff. And you get, now it's 25. Another person just died from injuries, which has been 2 years, hasn't it? So it bothers me in that we still had that many fatalities. And the thing that really bothers me is that we all know it. It's below ground shelter is best. Your safe room, if you have a safe room, above ground or below ground or basement. Of course, basements, I had some question about those. But get that safe room. And if you don't have a safe place, then you go to the lowest level, smallest room, center part of your house, and you get in the bathtub, you get down on the floor in the closet, put the helmet on, long sleeve shirts, all that stuff, and you stay there and ride the tornado out. Well, you've seen the damage. Unfortunately, with the large tornadoes, there is nothing left. There is no bathroom. There is no bathtub. And so I don't know how you fix that, because when I looked at the death locations on the May 2013 tornadoes, where did they list most of them? Bathroom, closet. That's where they told people they were going, and that's where they were, and it blew them away. So, and everybody knew it was coming. And everybody knew it was going to be big and bad and ugly. So what's the answer? What do you think the answer is?
That's a good question. Go ahead, Joey.
I was just going to say, I know one thing. I know the science is definitely better than a 15-person death difference. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're better than that, science-wise. But where's the breakdown from there?
I think it's the human response to the warnings. I think it's a human response. If everybody would have listened to what was going on and taken actions like everyone suggested, everybody would have been in a shelter. But some didn't have shelters. Like one lady told me, and I've talked to so many of them, and it's not easy to talk with them. She said she'd make friends with a neighbor down the road that had a storm shelter. So tornado warnings, take shelter. She walks down to her little boy. She sits on their front porch because they're not at home. And finally, the debris is falling out of the sky, and she finally decides to go ahead and use these people's safe room. There's just different response. The ones that I guess can't get to any place safe, they don't have a car, I don't know what it is. But I think it's the response, because the warning information is excellent. And I've been telling the people in my talks here in Oklahoma, I do a lot of them, you know what, the public has to start taking responsibility for their own safety. We can give them information. We can't tie them up and drag them to a shelter. If there'd been no advance information on this several days in advance, if the warnings would have been bad, we'd all be blaming ourselves and the government and such. But the information was good. Everybody did a good job, and they still. But I think a lot of it may be, or some degree of it, they think they're safe because for years we said go to the lowest level, smallest room, center part of the house. So what I tell them now is that you look at the damage. I show them a slide of the damage, and then I'll show them just a slab. There's nothing there. So that just says you have to make plans. You have to follow through. I don't know if we'll ever get to everyone. I think in '99, don't put me on the statistic. I believe 96% of the people knew it was coming, and in 2013, 98% of the people knew it was coming. So it's very frustrating. We've come a long ways with equipment wise, and I look at all the scientists and the researchers around the country and down at Norman. They've done a fantastic job, and we've really advanced. But what we've got to do now, Ricky, what would you do?
Me?
How would you solve that problem?
It depends. I mean, we live in, for example, I lived in East Virginia for a long time, and so granted we don't have the stronger tornadoes, but you'd also don't have the choice basements. So, I mean, probably just pile as much stuff on top of you as you can. Center room of your house with as much safety gear as you can. But I was getting to that point, though, in that I wanted you to comment on how you think buildings have changed over the years because of all the maybe newer buildings and a lot of these housing complexes that are built up very rapidly and some poor construction. Has that played into the role of it at all?
I think it has. Some of the people that were killed in the May 2013 tornadoes were in houses that were not substantial. I worry about some of these apartment complexes I see being thrown up. I always have visions of the Wichita Falls tornado in 1979 and that 3-story apartment complex, huge, being almost leveled. But I look at more. They've improved their building standards. I've forgotten now what percentage of the population has storm shelters. So that's an improvement. The building standards have to change, but you can't rebuild a building that's been there 20 years. But there are safe places in it. And last of May 2013, we had that huge tornado out west, 2.5 miles across. I think about that thing. I was looking at some video of it. You know, you had the whole thunderstorm rotating 2.5 miles across, and inside it, you know, they have the sub-vortices, smaller vortices, 2 football fields end to end. That's how wide they were. And then those small ones, as you know, were rotating around it, moving toward you at 175 miles an hour. If you're a storm chaser or a resident, you just have time to look up, and that's it. It's just, you picture something like that getting into a metropolitan area, what do? You know, I've almost come to the conclusion that we're not going to reach everybody. I think we reach them, but I don't think they respond.
Gary, we had Mike Bettis on, and he quoted what you said. You can give them the information, but it's up to them to act upon it. And I just think if we give them the information, they hear it several times, hopefully that'll somehow ring a bell, and they need to seek the shelter. But, you know, as us alerting the public about severe weather, you know, I think it's sad that we do see deaths, but if we give them the information, we can't, like you said, we can't tie them up and put them in the shelter. It's up to them to act upon it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's a tough deal. We're getting the information. The goal is to get the information, good, timely information to save lives, and that happens a lot. You know, there's been a lot of lives saved in Oklahoma through the years, but there's that X amount, you know. And like we knew, as soon as the more tornadoes started cranking up, and actually, from Linden State College, they found the tornado actually touched down 5 kilometers southwest of the official touchdown area. But anyway, the thing about it was so amazing, because I'm thinking, I've seen a lot of tornadoes. I've dealt with well over 1,000 tornadoes in my life, you know, eyeball to eyeball. And that thing, obviously on radar, it went up rotating. But the thing that's so unusual about it that surprised me, I think it took, it was less than 2 minutes to go from about 50 miles an hour to close to 200. Maybe that's fast. And it really wound up. It looked like something out of some kind of movie I'd seen somewhere. But it's just every year you get a little bit surprised. We have the tornado up more, and it's big and it's ugly, and max winds were about 220, 230. The one a few days later at the end of the month was 300 plus, wherever it was in there. Huge. And I remember that storm coming up from the south, and it just ingested it, and just got stronger and stronger and stronger. If that had been in a metropolitan area, it would have been a total disaster, absolute disaster. Fortunately, there was not too much around. It was bad on the storm chaser.
Are you surprised, Gary, that Oklahoma City hasn't, been the center of a large tornado hit over the years?
Well, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah,
it will happen.
It's true.
I always tell them, people say, well, I've got this river here, and it won't cross the river, and yeah, you just wait, baby, it's going to happen. And when I first came here, I gave my first talks in '72, and I told people then, and it's not being intelligent, it's just look at the statistics. And I would tell them, eventually a large F5 is going to come through a very populated area here in central Oklahoma. And I said it might be this year, it might be 25 years. It was a long time before it came. And we've got a lot of other ones around. But not a surprise, because you look at the video of the Fort Worth tornado. What year was that? All those, it was in downtown Fort Worth. It wasn't that, well, it was pretty good size. But eventually, if what's going to happen in Dallas, drive time or school time, and trying to let out school, and you're going to have an F5 mile wide come plowing through there, major disaster. The same thing could happen in any city in the tornado areas from south of Texas to the north and to you guys over in the east. They're fascinating to deal with, and I still find that everyone's a little bit different. They're just a little bit different. They behave a little bit differently. And I've seen a lot of them, and you think you've about seen it all, and then something like the May 2013 happens. You go, I haven't seen it all, maybe. We haven't seen the extremes yet. Someone asked me the other night at a talk, said, well, what about the temperatures? Do you think we've hit the hottest temperatures, we're going to have? And I said, no, we haven't hit the hottest, we haven't hit the coldest. We don't know what the extremes are on the bottom and on the top. We just don't know because we haven't been around long enough. What happened 10,000 years ago? It's pretty shaky. I don't recall too many thermometers from those days. 100,000 years ago, what was it like? You learn a lot when you go out and give a talk and the questions you get. It's quite fascinating.
I love it. I love it. Gary, one thing I want to kind of close the warning thing, and there was a controversy there in your area about a month ago with the EF2 that went through more. Talk about that a little bit. What's your thoughts on that with them not issuing the warning when, again, I'm here in North Carolina, so I'm just seeing what was being streamed, but it seemed to be an actual tornado on the ground, but yet a warning was not issued. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know what the decision process was there, but that storm developed out way west of Oklahoma City, moving east. It was just about due west, a little west northwest of us, and it was moving east. But there was a cool front coming down, so it was back behind the cool front a little bit. And normally, the normal reaction is, hey, it's behind the front. We may get some huge hail, but the chance of a tornado is really, really minimal. Well, as it got closer to Oklahoma City, it turned a little more to the southeast, and what happened is that you can go back and look at the Doppler data if you get a chance to look at it and in close, because you can see the front coming down. It was moving south. Well, at that point, as this mesocyclone got a little closer, that front stalled and began to pull back as a warm front into the mesocyclone. So what it did, it was over the cool air mass. Then it got out in front of it, got a little bit better air for ground circulation, low level circulation. We're probably so fortunate it wasn't 70-degree dew points, or we would have had a huge tornado. So what you had is on the front of the storm, we always say right rear quadrant, and we talk about what the circulation is. This is the front quadrant, baby, right on the front of that sucker. But it had a mesocyclone the whole way. And, I wasn't on the air, and my wife said, well, how would you have handled it? And I said, well, a storm that has a mesocyclone behind the front gives big hail, usually not a tornado. But as it got in close, you could see what was happening. And I would at least said something along the lines of, hey, this thing has had a circulation for X number of miles, may not produce a tornado, but just be aware. And what happened, everybody seemed intent in denying anything was going to happen. It seemed like there was a surge of, it's not going to happen, it's not there, it's going to be hail and some wind and all these things. And I guess maybe like I was sitting here just sitting back watching all of it and looking at the radars. And I had no pressure to give warnings, all right, and talk to the public, so I could see a little bit better what was going on. But there was that, even when it was on the ground, I'm looking at the television. I said, hey, to my wife, tornado right there. And because you could see it. And the thing is, I don't, the TV stations, they didn't want to agree. Then suddenly they did agree that there was a tornado, at least a couple of them did. There was a tornado because, you could see it, and it wasn't. And then they got in, while it was going on, the discussion of the strong, straight winds, being all this blah, blah, blah. Hey, man, you don't have to be in Oklahoma very long. That's a tornado. And I don't, and finally the warning came out. Now, I think they list the warnings coming out officially as, 6:41. And the tornado actually touched down at 6:35. And clocked it, that's the great thing about those helicopter shots. They got that clock in the side there. So, but I don't know what's going on there. I don't know, and I'm not criticizing them. I'm just happy I didn't have to be there and do the warnings for sure on that particular night. Because sitting here watching and all relaxed, I think you can probably make better decisions.
Gary, sorry, you mentioned helicopters. From when you first got into television, and we had the transition to radars, how much did the transition to live video and storm chaser feeds change how you covered storms?
Well, we used first of all, we used a helicopter back in 1979 and 80, and then 81 it caught the day of the Binger tornado, F4, F5 monster. It was so big you couldn't tell what it was. We had a photographer and a reporter out there, and that's who we used as storm chasers. And they said, hey, go out and sit on that hill right at that location. And they were out there, and you can listen to their tape. I still have it. And they're talking about what they're going to do on Saturday night. And I'm pointing to the screen to myself, that's a tornado. And they're going, yeah. Then they're just shooting the bull back and forth. I'm going, you guys are going to be blown away. They missed them, but I don't think they ever knew what it was. But the helicopter went out that day, and it wasn't too experienced, all right? And it's a smaller helicopter, and they get out in western Oklahoma, they radio in and say, we have a tornado at Cordell, Oklahoma. It's about 100 miles due west. And I looked at my radar, and I thought, well, the radar's broken or something because I don't have a storm there. And so we put them on the air, and I said, yeah, it's near Cordell. It's doing this and this and this. To make a long story short, during all this, I get a phone call. In those days, we answered every phone call. And this guy said, hey, that tornado you got on the air is out here in my pasture. And he said, I live north of Clinton, which is about a 60-mile or 40-mile difference. The pilot was lost. So he goes on, he flies on east, he sees another one, and it's an LP. This one's an LP. It's just incredible. And he's too close, and he gets caught in the inflow. And that old helicopter was just shaking and going on. And he told me later, he said, about another 5 seconds, that would have been history. He turns on its side trying to get out of the inflow, and he gets away. He had to land on it at the center median, the Interstate 40, 3 times to get home that night. Those guys are crazy. They're just crazy. And nowadays, so they changed it then, you know, we showed tornadoes in western Oklahoma, at least in 81, probably sooner than that, I don't remember. So it changed it some then, but when those things happened, we didn't say, oh gosh, this is really a wonderful thing. You know, because sometime in the late 80s, 90s, we started messing around with cellular telephones. And one of the guys there took, as the Apple, the big old Apple, huge Apple, when they first came out, whatever, maybe it was a Mac, I don't know what it was, and hooked that to a security camera. And we tested that, drove it out to Clinton, Oklahoma, about 60 miles out, sent back a color photograph. It was just gorgeous. Of course, it took a long time. And then everybody, if we started using that system, because we used 2 or 3 different security systems to send pictures back, it was really good because they were analog, they're black and white, and they came fast. But every time you tried to send, you know, multicolored, you couldn't do it. But anyway, it's changed things. The helicopters now have changed a lot. Storm Chasers, Channel 9, they have incredibly great cameras. So it's great video. Everybody gets the video, but really the helicopters are the one that kind of topples everything. If it's out there in its daylight, you know, you got it. If it's on the storm. Now, you know, I would not do that. I know it's a lot of fun for a lot of people. I would not do that because I've seen what's happened occasionally, like a small bird coming through the windshield, totally through it. And I can just imagine what baseball hail might do. But those guys just have nerves of steel. I don't have it.
Well, Gary, with Ricky talking about the helicopters, also I've been watching some of your coverage that you did from the 2013 storms. How important is your storm spotters out there in the field? I mean, I watch your coverage, and you've got talking on the radio or talking on TV, and then you have spotters in your ears saying they're here and there. I mean, it seems like it's just a madhouse. So talk about how important those storm spotters are for you guys back in the studios.
Well, I think storm spotters, ones that are talking to television or talking to the media, talking to the broadcasters, are valuable if they're good, and if they don't panic, you know, and if they don't get to arguing with each other. You've seen the video. You saw the Canadian County tornado, or on the 19th. Some of our guys got in an argument. What had happened at that point is pretty obvious. I was just about finished with on-air stuff, and you know when that happens, you know it's kind of you turn the horses loose in the pasture, and they'll bite each other and kick and go on. But I lost a lot of confidence in what was going on right then with some of the stuff that was going on with storm chasers in the field. And I've seen some storm chasers on television stations make up tornadoes through the years. I mean, and we documented it. It's way out there. Not everybody had cameras, you know, and then nothing's around. I say, I've got a tornado with that, and so that stuff, a lot of that's gone away because everyone has cameras now. A guy can't get out there and lie about what he sees. But I knew what was happening on the Canadian County tornado. Went 2.5 miles across. It was getting larger, and I'm talking to Val and another guy out there. I said, "You guys are too close." And Val's a great guy, and he's chased for since '91. And he said, it's not moving. Well, maybe what he was looking at wasn't moving right at the apex of that thing, but the rest of the storm was just doing that. He was under it and didn't know it. He could have received one of those moving toward 175 miles an hour. And so we got a little bit of an argument on the air. If you listen to it. I said, well, let me tell you something. You think it's not moving, but it is moving. And so that kind of stuff is not good. And the tornadoes of May 19, 2013, I had, because some of the storm trackers in the field and storm chasers in the field went nutso, okay? And it got on the air. I had husbands call, I had wives call, children were terrified, and you know, so that kind of stuff has to stop. It has to be professional to be of value. And overall, I think our storm chasers do a really exceptionally good job. They get good video. They get the storms and that kind of stuff. And there's a great value to that. I think sometimes our storm chasers are the best is at night. I've seen them do fabulous things, leapfrogging each other a mile, 2 miles at a time, going due east and following tornadoes across the metro. So they're a value, but if it's media stuff and they're going to be on the air, you got to be calm, And I'm not sure I really condone or like when I hear here in other places storm chasers in the field start yelling, get below ground, get below ground. I'm not sure that's the proper role. Their purpose is to take a look at the tornado, where it is, how bad does it look, all this kind of stuff that's going on, and leave it to the main meteorologist to be saying, hey, take your precaution, do this, that. So, long answer to your question.
Well, Gary, let's kind of move gears here. I want to talk about specifically the Moore tornado in 1999, and then the back-to-back tornadoes in 2013. Kind of talk us the setup that day, what your thoughts were, how you strategically placed your meteorologist, and just kind of give us an overview of those particular days in Gary England's mind. I mean, what were you thinking about? What was that day like for you, or those days like for you?
So you want to start with 99?
Yeah, we'll start with 99 and then go to 2013. Okay.
Well, there's another one. Even back then, it was pretty obvious there's going to be severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. No one had any idea that it's going to be like it was. But we knew there would be some because the conditions were there. You had the trough, you had the cape, you had all the things you need, you had the shear, all that stuff. And you can just list it off. We had it. Knew it was going to happen. So we usually, we'll be meeting all the meteorologists 2 days ahead of time, then one day, and then the day of. We've already decided basically where we're going to put people. On the May 3rd, 99, we figured it was going to be pretty bad. We put out, we took photographers, put them out. We had, I forget how many storm trackers we had, teams of 2. We put out about 8 or 9 storm tracker units, plus live trucks, microwave trucks, and it's just about the shape of a football. We just aligned it from about Lawton, Oklahoma, up through Oklahoma City on the north, and just bubbled them out around that way, and we guessed really well. If you can see all the video from that day, we got every large tornado that occurred. I say we, the people in the field and our folks, they did a marvelous job. So that was the day we knew what was going to happen. We didn't know there'd be 60 tornadoes. We didn't know it'd be the strongest winds ever recorded in history that day. But we were ready because we planned. Same thing with 2013. Pretty obvious. It's going to be ugly stuff. We didn't know it'd be actually 3 days of it. And really, when it got time, the day of, the day before, and the day of the watches, it could have happened in Paul's Valley, but it just on one of those days, a little boundary was just looped right through Oklahoma City, and so it looked. So we planned ahead of time. Like I said, on the 13th, we kept on 2013, we kept all of our people home here in the metro. Kept a helicopter in the metro. We sent one crew to Paul's Valley just in case. He did get a tornado down there, but so we plan ahead well in advance. Days before, then the night before, then the day of, and you assign those locations. One of the challenges with storm chasers to get them to go to the place where they're supposed to go. The standard line for years, we say, Val, take a left and go to the left there, go 5 miles. A few minutes later, we look at GPS, we say, Val, your other left. And, so they get excited. But so it's all about preparation, whether it's for safety or whether it's actually planning to cover the storms. And we've guessed right on a lot of storms and done pretty well in that particular case. And the people that work at Channel 9 are really seasoned, like they are many at the station, very seasoned in what they do, whether they're a director or producer or whatever it is. They're pretty good at covering these things. But we live in a world of death and destruction and human suffering. Yes, sir, Joey.
I was going to say, I watched some of your videos, and there's a story about one of the guys working with you who happened to look out the back door of the building and happened to see a tornado coming and came to talk and came and got you to go look out the back of the building. I think that was the May 99.
That was that's 1986. That was the story about Alan Mitchell. I think this is when you're talking about. We were inside, and we didn't have cameras everywhere in those days, and this big mesocyclone was developing down southwest of Oklahoma City. Oklahoma County is just a big rectangle, about 600 square miles, and we started getting reports of wall cloud rotation, small hail, and baseball size hail funnels, and just wrapping up down about 30, 40 miles southwest. So I turned to Alan Mitchell. He works down in Southern Oklahoma, North Texas now. And I said, and Alan was ex-Air Force. Always looked good, smelled good. Beautiful silver hair, baby. He looked good. Kind of ducktails here. Suit's always buttoned up. And I said, Alan, why don't you go out behind and look? And Alan said, yes, sir. And he disappeared. And in those days, we'd still cut back and then come back and do an update and show a little bit of whatever we're showing, the program. Then we'd come back. And a few minutes later, after he went out, I sensed him behind me. I felt Alan Mitchell behind me. And I turned around, and Alan, that beautiful silver hair was all blown over to the side, and his tie was all back, and his coat was back, and he was pointing at the sky, just going, you. And he really puckered me up. He said, you better come and look at this. And so I ran out the back door, and the whole sky was rotating. And I was pretty pumped up, and I was scared to death because I was going to have to do one of those updates, the tornado warning continues for Oklahoma County. All residents continue tornado precautions. Stay with News 9. We'll keep you advised. Because you heard me do. The problem was my voice was up like this, and I just knew I was going to shout, "You're all going to die!" But I made it through it, and it hit. It was about 150, 60 mile per hour. Hit Edmond, Oklahoma. It was quite a time. We've had a lot of funny times. We had a tornado. We had a time here. And tornado, I don't know, it was 2003, 2004. One mesocyclone, one thunderstorm with a mesocyclone started in southwest Oklahoma, 150 miles away, and came toward Oklahoma City at 30 miles per hour. It took forever to get here. Never produced a tornado. Big mesocyclone. Everything it needed, except couldn't produce a tornado. Got to southwest Oklahoma City, put down 2 or 3 small tornadoes, wind damage, Then it was coming across Oklahoma City, west east, in the air, over northwest, over 63rd Street. Well, we're just about 5 blocks north of 63rd Street. And we had a live truck on the Broadway extension looking to the southwest. And should have if I could ever find him, the guy driving the truck, tell you the story. He's in there. And the standard line is, if you see Val Castor beside you, it's not a good idea. So he said he was sitting in his truck, and he's live, and he's watching, and he's got a big light on out there, too. And about that time, there was a rear flank downdraft came around, and I'm telling you, the world lit up. It almost knocked down the TV set. We're watching all this, and you see the engineer run through the picture. It's almost like in slow motion. Man, he runs through, and he's running, and he said he looked over, and there's Val Castor beside him. He's going, "Oh no, no!" And then Val, through all this commotion, because at that time Doppler on wheels sent a message: tornadoes intensifying rapidly. Still near along 63rd Street, about 2 miles southwest of us. And so it was pretty wild. Val called and said Val said on the air, "Gary, it's coming to the station." And we've been so busy with taking tornado precautions, stay blah, 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 blah. And we're staring right in the face. It's a classic hook echo and mesocyclone coming right at us. I never even thought about it because we were so busy. Val said, "It's coming to the station." I said, "Pardon me?" He said, "It's coming to the station." I said, "Get everybody out here." And Jed Gassel was dove under the desk with his rear sticking out. I said, "Jed, that's not going to cut it." And there was not a gentleman in the place that night. It was every person for themselves. We don't have a safe room. See, we have a safer room because it's safer than the other ones. And everybody ran for that. And the best way to tell it, we had 2 producers, a male and a female. Jenny's the gal. She told me later, the guy that was up there with her said, "Jenny, you go on. You go on. I got it covered, Jenny." And she told me so she took off the cellar or the basement. And she said, he ran up her back about 10 seconds later, like knocked her down trying to get in there. So it was, and the roar was so loud, but right there where the antenna is, and the tornado passed directly over us. And flip that radar to real high elevation, you just see the donut hole going right over us. And it came down about a half a mile northeast of us, and they estimated the damage. The winds were about 157 miles per hour. But no gentleman that night, man. It was every person for themselves. So lots of fun things like that happened, and some scary things too.
You got any more funny stories for us?
Well, I got a lot of them. I'll probably tell you. This is kind of on Val Castor. He worked for us in 1991. For those you don't know Val, he's a storm chaser. And he really, he came out, and I couldn't get him hired as a storm chaser, so I got him a job as a floor cameraman. And because Channel 9 didn't want to have to pay storm chasers. So I got him a phone, and one day storm came up, 1991, April 1991, day of the Red Rock tornado. F4, F5 measured the Dow, measured 286 mile per hour that day. So it was a hoss, and it's coming from the west, the west southwest. First of all, Val's going down the road in his pickup. He's a bunch of yahoos in there with him, and they got the camera, the old truck just bouncing along, and you can tell the camera, and then you look out the back window, and there's a tornado on the highway right behind them. And so they get out of that, and they go on down Interstate 35. Interstate 35 runs north and south, and he doesn't have a tripod. You can see from his video. And he's doing this, and you can tell he's watching the tornado because with time his camera would come down and show the ground. And it was a pretty wild day. It was a day really several people caught a horizontal rotating tube, being tilted. It was already in the horizontal, being pulled right in the storm, tilted into vertical. It was really, really quite an amazing day. But and I got you probably seen the one of Val from May 3rd, 99. His wife's always going with him because she runs all the equipment here on Southwest on 119th. The tornado is right there. It's huge, and there's just crap in the air, stuff flying. And he just, and he passes a car and passes another car, and she yells, "You're gonna hit him!" And he pulls around the last one, and all the police cars were pulling out of the way. Even the cops were rolling over for him. It was crazy times. And it's good to be able to look back at a lot of that stuff and laugh, But golly, fun times.
Man, those are some good stories there. And Gary, I know Ricky's got a question here in just a second, but the 2013 tornado outbreak, that was kind of your last hurrah. Talk a little bit about that and what you saw, and kind of like, you went off air a little bit after that. Did that have anything to do with it, or?
Well, I wasn't real pleased with what went on in the field and the panic that was caused. And I think also you go through all this stuff all these years, and you look around and say, "Yeah, we got 24 dead. We blew 2 schools away." How's this going to work? How are we going to fix this? And so there were a lot of things like that. And it was I think the Sunday after, I was very fortunate that News 9 gave me a contract where at any time I wanted to take myself off the air, I could, and still be paid. And I decided, after that Canadian county that went 2.5 miles wide, that's it, baby. So I activated that clause, and so I still do a few stories for them, not very much, and they're gracious to continue to pay me. So it worked out quite well.
Gary, Joey has a friend that lives out in Oklahoma City, and we took one of the afternoons off from the conference, and we actually went out to El Reno.
Yeah.
And we stood in the field. The field just monstrous. I sat there and I took a picture, as I couldn't imagine a 2.5 mile wide tornado just coming at you. I mean, it's just crazy to think about.
It was just so big, and no one had any indication of anything like that. But I have to tell you, there's video and there's measurements from Dow. You need to look it up. The Mulhall tornado, Mulhall, Mullhall, or just Mulhall, Mulhall, Oklahoma, May 3rd, 1999, about 10:30 at night. We'd had 45, 50 tornadoes by that time, but they're still going. The Dow is Doppler on wheel for those people that don't know what we're talking about. They could measure wind speeds, the width. That tornado measured over 4 miles wide, and I think it was from 60 mile per hour on one side to 60 mile per hour on another. It was titanic in size, and there's one shot of it from Interstate 35, and it was a long way to Interstate 35. You can't even get it in the viewfinder. You just see the whole left side. So there have been bigger ones, not only in Oklahoma but other places. It's just been at night, and we haven't been able to see them. But it's quite interesting if you look that up. The guy that does the Doppler on wheel stuff, they got a study, the Mulhall tornado, Titanic.
Have to definitely look up into some of that data.
Yeah, it's good. It's a lot of. There's so much data out there. We're just wading around in it. I say, what do we do next? Because they're getting very good now. They got some models down at OU that are pretty close to predicting tornadoes within a short time frame. Because I think there's kind of a discussion within the government and such to warn on forecast instead of warn on sight. They're not going to wait apparently for radar indication and such, but the idea is if the model says that, then they'll issue the warning. But who knows how that'll work? And talk about going to probabilities instead of just the fan that goes out and gives time of arrival, going into probabilities, whether the audience will buy that or not. We've got a major tornado coming toward them, and we can't get them to go to the cellar. I'm not sure 20% will do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think Ricky had a question kind of concerning with the SPC and their way you're talking about warning time and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wanted you to hit on, Gary, your thoughts on the new SPC outlooks, and specifically as well your thoughts on TV stations in Oklahoma City maybe going away from what the SPC says, making their own forecasts, and from your forecasting perspective and broadcast career, how that's gone.
Well, I like what the SPC does. They occasionally mess up, just like anyone. Their outlooks are fine. And the thing is, they're guidance. Even when there's the tomorrow's outlook, that's just guidance. And you talk about television, and I've done it before. If what I'm receiving I don't agree with, I change it. And so I feel like a person who's on the air has the responsibility of issuing warnings, should have the responsibility of the right to make those changes in those outlooks if they think so. Probably drawing a difference between them, say, hey, Weather Service doesn't think this, but I do right now, and don't say it in a bad manner. Just say, it's differing opinions. Everybody has differing opinions. But I think it's going to be interesting as time goes along, because I've noticed that there's different maps, different colors, but we've had that kind of off and on through the years, because in television it comes down to people, it comes down to bodies, warm butts warming that seat. And that's, you have to get them to watch you. So sometimes you try it through colors, sometimes you try different connotation of what you're saying, different maps. Who knows what works? I think most people do get the warnings, and we save most of the people, but there's that X number we don't. So I think I answered your question there. I said SPC normally does a really good job.
Yeah, one of the big issues with the SPC and everybody doing their own thing, there's a big discussion in the Weather Enterprise about everybody getting on the same page. And we know the Oklahoma market might be the most competitive market, period, without a doubt. But do you think there'll ever be a time when everybody just kind of maybe, I don't want to say use the SPC, but we'll just use that for an example at this moment. Do you think there'll ever be a time that everybody will just use the SPC and say this is what their outlook is, and then maybe tweak it a little bit from there, but everybody will actually use the same information?
Well, they'll only use it if it's the risk of a jail sentence if they don't. They're going to change it no matter what. Excuse me. They're going to change it. And there's a risk of a single source. Whether it's single source something, the single source weather information, no matter how good they are, having that competition makes a difference. Through the years, I've been very competitive with the Weather Service in Norman, and through the years, a couple of us guys, between he and I, a couple of folks, we almost went to hand combat. They were protecting their area, and I was protecting mine. But that competition, and there's people who, in fact, I know one PhD down at Norman will tell you this, that competition helped drive the Weather Service and all the entities into better forecasting, and then they got more money for studies and all of that. So competition made the difference. You say you want everybody to have to buy the same car, same deal. Competition kills the originality, kills the progress. So if you don't have the competition, that's what happens. So they may eventually do that, but then for the TV people, they'll say to themselves, or management say, well, why don't we have these guys on? We can just buy one of those robots that reads this thing off. So they look at it from how can we make money? And so it's an interesting question that's coming up.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree with some of those points. I think my thought on the thing was maybe try to use something as a baseline, and then let the TV meteorologist explain off of that, just to cut down on confusion, because we know that when everybody puts out something different, it does cause confusion. I mean, and we know that confusion leads to injuries and deaths, and that's possible. I mean, I don't think there's any argument there, but neither there's ever going to be a way to cut down on that confusion. Well, I mean, if you had the opportunity to talk to everybody in the TV market right now, what would you tell everybody to do to help help cut down on any of that.
You talk about the TV, people on TV?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the people on TV now. If you had the opportunity, if they were all coming to Gary England for the advice on what we should do to cut down the confusion and save more lives, what would you tell them to do?
Well, see, I'm not sure about the confusion. I know there's studies that say it does cause confusion, but I can tell you in Oklahoma, people pretty well know when there's going to be tornadoes. They know when there's a warning. They know what a watch is. They're all amateur meteorologists. So I'm not sure there's that much confusion, either when they interview people. Now, it's just like there'll be a tornado, and our news crew will go out and find somebody who's in the tornado, and sure enough, every time they pick the guy that said, I didn't get a warning at all. I got absolutely no warning. So what were you doing? Well, he said, I was out there working on my truck. I was under my truck. I was working on my truck. He didn't get, well, no wonder he didn't get the warning. So, there's that, and then people take that as, oh my gosh, they don't know what's happening. So I don't know. What would I say to them? I'd say definitely, obviously, use the SPC, National Weather Service is good guidance, and use the SPC warnings as what's happening. And then you have to modify, I'd say, and modify it as you think you must, because there's going to be times when things are happening, and the Weather Service will be behind, or the television station will be behind, and you have to make do. Because what I said earlier was that when that warning comes out, basically those of us in the media take over. The Weather Service is still feeding a lot of information, but we're watching it live. We're doing the projections, and so it's an interesting. There's a transition from just the pure watching the warning area into the media, just basically saying what they think needs to be said. And I don't see that changing. What I say to them, I just say, be professional, make good decisions, don't get anybody killed.
That's very good advice, Gary.
Yeah, it's an interesting business. I didn't realize the stress, and I know someone told me down at the National Weather Service they brought in counselors to the people that were involved in the May 2013 tornadoes, because it is stressful, and the thing is, you're watching it. If you have any sense about you, people are dying when you watch one of those big tornadoes. You're watching it live go through, and people are being killed and their lives being shattered forever. And so it's not a game. It's high stress. It's high stress, and it's very, very serious. I kind of like it. Here's what I like a tornado too. Here it comes. Here's the path. It's going to move, the small envelope coming through there. Well, the people in front of it, baby, that's a big deal. The people on the side sometimes are kind of like those at the NASCAR races. They're just kind of watching what's happening. They're excited about that. Who's got the best picture? So it's really it's difficult to get your hands on it. Because when you pull back and look at the Moore tornado from X number of miles up, it's just a little tiny line. There may be some way we could pull those in, hopefully. I don't know, but when I look at what happened with that Moore tornado, it went up to that. It was moving east northeast, and it cut left, went up to that 7-Eleven, and rotated right on that 7-Eleven, and took off east southeast. Same thing with the Canadian County tornado. It went almost all. In fact, it did go all directions. It finally turned almost northeast, did a loop, paused a little bit, and then went east and dissipated. So I started cutting down the area of the warning. I don't know. I don't know. I think for the foreseeable future, you're going to see media people, judging just where the risk really is. Here comes the warning, and they'll modify that warning. Use the baseline of the National Weather Service. Use the warnings, but at least here in Oklahoma City, they're really, really good on their warnings. But I can see the media people, what you want to do is you bring it, once it passes May Avenue, say, you folks, west of May, you're okay. If you're east of May, you're still in jeopardy. And I like to do, I take north-south roads. We have those here. And if you're east of this road and you're north of this road, I'll give the road, that's the risk area. And so we're still using the warnings, but adding that extra information, trying to urge them to go to safety. And there's always that, and I maintain, you probably heard me talk about it, there's some tornadoes you can flee. Like May 3rd, 99, had a 3-hour warning, It's so long people took a nap before it got here. Of course, it went through several cycles. That was one early on you could move out, and that's what I told people to do. And we've since seen at least one study, where there would probably been 700 to 800 fatalities of those people hadn't gotten out in front of it. So I caught a lot of flack for doing that at those days, but it just happened. I knew I had to, because for years I've been saying lowest level, smallest room, center part, blah, 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 blah. And that day, as that storm kept coming, and each time it recycled, it was larger. and then it was going through the power lines, and you know people are dying was going through the power lines. And it just, I said, the first thing I said, I think was, don't go outside and look at this because it will kill you. And the next thing I said pretty quickly was that most structures are not going to survive this tornado. And the third thing I finally said is you need to be below ground level to survive. Now, yes, people survive. You've seen pictures of them. 2x4s through their head, things stuck in their legs, blind, brain injuries. Who wants to try to survive a tornado? And you can survive in a tornado. I always look, maybe you can take a closet bathroom when you build a house, even afterwards. You just reinforce that with some steel, drive those bolts in, and that probably, because with most tornadoes, you're just fine sheltering in place. It's a little tiny, less than 2%, buddy. It's going to blow you all the way to Kansas, maybe even Nebraska. So people need to understand that it's serious business.
Gary, speaking of that, there was a meteorologist in the OKC area in the 2013 storms that said drive south, and we've seen interstates they're congested. I mean, well, thoughts on that? Was that an appropriate thing to say at that time too, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the setup between the 99 event and the 2013 event.
Well, 2099, a lot of people were upset that I said, move to a place of safety. And I was saying, you and more still have time to move to a place of safety. So you have to have the time. And some are non-flee storms, you just can't flee. But I believe it's severe storm lab, but there's an official study that said the fatalities could have been 700 to 800 in 99 if people hadn't moved out of the way. So, whatever I said back then was justified. We were successful. I don't care what anybody thinks. I know. I talked to the people who came back and their houses were gone. Everything was gone. In 99, the go south comment by someone on the air was incorrect, improper, non-professional, all of those things. That happens. It may happen again. I don't know whether it just came out or was planned that way or what. But, the darn storm, in fact, you probably saw tape me earlier in the day. I'm showing they're going this way, but then they're going to turn east, and they're going to turn more this way, and it was turning east-southeast at that particular time. And I got to think, guys. And there's a guy, I live on that tornado. I live miles from it, the 2013 tornado, 8-10 miles. There are people in my neighborhood that heard all that stuff going on and jumped in their cars and drove south. A little lady called me up a few days later, and she was so upset with me because her car had been ruined. She had gone south. She said, you told me to go south, and got down there, it was flooded, and I drove off and, ruined her car and all this stuff. And I said, ma'am, other thing I say, I'll send you the videotapes of all three stations, and I'll pay you $1 million if you can find me saying to go south. But people make mistakes and all that too. So I think.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't hear you say it on the 2013 story.
No, I've never said go south.
Gary, do you think maybe and I don't know the population difference between 99 and 2013, but do you think maybe the population difference can make a difference there? I mean, maybe fleeing from it is completely out of the realm of possibility at this point.
Well, it depends on when you flee. If we tell people an hour ahead of time, with sometimes the warnings, we spot the storm and say, this is going to produce a tornado in the next 1 to 2 hours. It's going to threaten the metro. That's the time you pack up and you leave. I tell them, you never wait until you can see it. And, all Okies like to go outside and look. They go outside and look at it. And but there's some storms you can flee on, but it has to be early and with great care. The way I put it, leaving your home with an approaching tornado is a life decision. And life and death is what I probably should put in, but it's a life decision. It has to be made with great care and great education.
Hey Gary, that's just not in Oklahoma. We in North Carolina, we like to stand out on the porch too and see the tornadoes coming.
I think part of it's that I want to make sure it's really there.
Right. Yeah.
At night, that's a problem,
I make sure everybody knows to do what I say and not what I do.
Yeah, I know, Joey.
Gary, we don't want to take up too much more of your time. We'd like to hit a couple fun questions as well. One more serious question on my side, and I don't know if the other guys have any, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about some fun stuff. Is what is your thoughts or your theory on why more Oklahoma has been hit so many times? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like they are the center of tornadoes coming through their area.
When you look at the tracks, as you have, it's pretty scary. For years, I've just said, well, there has to be some place in the United States that more tornadoes than all others come together. There's going to be some geographical point. And I said, mountains of the west, ocean of the Gulf down to the south, and the system's coming across with the right latitude. But, you know, it's very eerie when you look at those. And I talked to one fella who's been a scientist at OU, and he said, maybe, you know, he looked at it years ago. He looked at the heat island effect. I don't know, because you get that big bubble over the cities that are a little bit warmer. I remember on the May 19th, the May 20th tornado, more, you know, it was hotter than you know what along that dry line and frontal system. And I don't know. I just don't know. There's not any obvious topography. Could it be the wind farms? I don't know how long they've all been there. Could they? We know that on wind farms, they're a drag on the low-level flow, but they're also an area of turbulence, and it's getting ready to put some of those up that reach 500 feet up, and the tip of the blade moves 170 miles an hour. Of course, around here, that disturbs the Doppler just a little bit. But who knows for sure? I don't know, and hopefully someone's looking at it, because I think it deserves an answer. The first really significant tornado I remember in Moore was in October 1998, north to south. Our storm chaser was Mark Hill, and he was driving north, tornadoes right on his left, and he's going through Moore, just bang, 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 bang. And then all these other ones, you don't know. There may be something else to it. I'm not smart enough to figure it out. So when you figure it out, you let me know.
I know, Gary, I know you're a smart man. You got this. All right. Well, Ricky, do you have anything else? I don't think the other guys do.
Yeah, I was just curious, Gary, how much you still dabble in weather on a daily basis, and also if you have an escape, you know, from everything, because you mentioned the stress that came from the job back in the day. Did you have something that you did to get away from everything?
Back in the day, no. I was totally consumed with weather, and it was really good to me. Great life, all that stuff. But it was almost 24 hours a day. You know, I've been in California and other places. I fly home, and when I thought there was going to be severe weather, so it's total commitment, and I had no time for anything else. I loved what I was doing. I loved every minute of it. But now, and I want to get a plug in here. You can go, you know, I hope you've seen it. You can go to Gary England, garyengland.ou.edu. Go to Gary, and it's Gary England's Tornado Alley. And it's kind of done like I do my weather shows, called Gary. It's in Gary speak. Hey, this happens and then this happens. No mathematics, and it doesn't contain everything, but it's a great educational tool. It's a great safety tool. You can go on there and for free and download that. And anybody that's homeschooling, it's a great tool. So I started that. There it is. I saw that rascal just then. Did you see that?
Yeah. That I posted the first introduction video from that on our event, and I will get the full playlist of all of those that posted up so people can watch them.
Good, I appreciate that very much, Joey. What else I do right now? I have a company called Metcon LLC that I do consulting with attorneys. I also do some expert witness testimony. That keeps me busy. I work for OU part-time. I was appointed their consulting meteorologist in residence, which was a surprise. And so I'm staying busy. And the thing is, I guess I get my relaxation from working. I just love doing the research on the legal cases and putting reports to get all that. And I'm doing Twitter. You know, I'm doing Twitter Periscope, baby.
If I'm not mistaken, I've seen you play golf on Periscope one time. So. Yeah,
that was the second or third time I used it. If a guy had the time, and if I had the time, I could broadcast to 200, 300,000 people on that crazy thing. But I paid my dues, and I got a few people that follow, and I have fun with it.
Next time I come out to Oklahoma City, I'm bringing my golf clubs, and we'll go find us a course to play at.
Man, I'm deadly, baby.
I'm ready for it. Well, we've been talking about in our little chat. We see the Twister poster just over your shoulder there. If I'm not mistaken, you had a little involvement in that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, they never called back. Yeah, it was fun, and they were here. Was that 95, 96, something like that, and they came in and they tried to recreate what we had back in the 70s and 80s, and finally she said, we just got to use the real thing, and they at first were going to use me in the first of the movie, the 1960s setting. They thought it'd really be neat to have back in the 70s, and then he'd show me from whatever the thing was set. Anyway, it was a time where you got the younger Gary and the older Gary on the same deal doing warning. That didn't fly, but it was great fun, and they were good people. They make a lot of money. They paid me for what I did for like I don't know, 5 years. Every time it ran, every time you watched it, I got a penny or something. But they
Well, as many times as we've seen it, we probably bought you a house.
Well, let me tell you a little story about it. When I got out to California to do some stuff for them, what they do is they're in a big studio and they throw the movie up on a wall there, and you get in front of the microphone and you do your thing. And I was a little scared. I watched Bill Paxton do his, and he's a great guy. And then who was it? Helen Hunt did hers, or Jamie Gertz. Jamie Gertz did her little piece, and they throw up the movie there, and they voice over that stuff, and they say, okay, and they say to one of them, you need to be out of breath, and he'd drop down and do a bunch of push-ups and jump back up and do the voiceover. And I'm watching all this, really enjoying it, and I'm thinking, God, I'm next. I'm just next. And so earlier that day, to go along with the story, they'd showed me their script. They originally had the script, the tornado was going from Muskogee to northern Oklahoma. All righty? I said, you can't do that. It needs to come from the southwest, all right? They said, they don't care. And so we got it changed. I said, make it come from the southwest. So they revised it. No, I said, what I said to them is use Altus rather than Muskogee. So they had the tornado go from northern Oklahoma to Altus was what they had written in the thing. And finally, I said, that's just not the way it works. People will know that that's not right. But when I got out there, they asked me, Jan de Bont, the main director, I guess it was, he said, help us make this thing real. I said, so I helped him rewrite the script, quite a bit of stuff there. And it was I'll back up a little more. When they first came to Oklahoma, they called us and wanted me to do a safety meeting for them. Because so I went to Punk City, but we did the safety meeting. And at the end of my meetings, like at companies, I always say, in the final analysis, if you're out there, if you're working on this movie or whatever, and you feel threatened by the weather, you have the right to leave the premises. You have the right to get in your car and leave. And Helen Hunt, or Jan de Bont, jumped up and yelled, you can't say that! He's screaming at me because he's seen all of his people leave. And she jumped up and screamed to him, yes, he can, sit down and shut up. Well, there goes my career. And that was before we even worked out anything on the air. But then I went to California, did stuff, and it was fun, and it was just fascinating. That world is totally make-believe. But they were willing to do Muskogee or Altus on the storm. It didn't make that much difference. It took a lot of talking to get them to understand what people will know around the country that it's going the wrong way.
And I guess another cameo appearance you made was on the Colbert Show.
Oh, yeah, that was great fun. They called me up a couple of years ago. Right after May 2013. And this little girl says, Mr. Ingram, we'd like to have you come to New York City and be on the Colbert Report. I said, yeah, right. I figured somebody put a joke on me. So we talked a little bit, and I realized she's serious. And I said, I'm from Sealing, Oklahoma. My wife's from Hobart, Oklahoma. You bet we'll come to New York City. So they flew us up there first class, and it was a neat deal. And they flew into New Jersey. And it's not a busy airport. So we get outside there, and this big dude, baby. He's got black hair, but it's real curly all the way around, a lot of hair, and he's got a big ponytail. He's a big, muscular dude, man. And he's got a ruddy complexion, and I'm always a little suspicious stuff like that. And he's holding a sign, England. I said, well, that's us. We get in, and we're driving by As the marshes where the tide comes in and out. It looked like something I'd seen in a movie where they took people to kill them. I said, man, this probably was going to happen. Well, we finally get there, and we pull up at this place. It's a building, and I said to the driver, the big dude, I said, you sure this is a hotel? Yeah, this is a hotel. And so we get out, and we go inside, and there's quite a few people in there. Then we sign in, we go up to our room, and my gosh, the windows were wall to wall, 20 feet high. We had all of Manhattan out in front of us. It was just absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And so we did that, and came to the time to go do the show. And he doesn't tell you what he's going to talk about, what you're going to talk about. So you go in there, and they got to have a green room, and they had all kinds of little drinks and food and apples and oranges, all that stuff. And he came in and shot the bull a little bit, and he's got to see you out there. And so I go out there. We got ready to go out to the girl. Said, now remember, he's the funny guy, not you. I'm thinking, well, I hope so. And anyway, you go out there, and he's sitting at that side. Well, used to where his set always is, and they put you at another table over here, and they said, don't stand up unless he tells you to stand up. Well, of course, you forget that very quickly. But he's over there, and I just remember hearing him shout, now let's go to Gary England. And he runs across the studio, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I shouldn't be here. I was terrified, but it was great fun. And I think one thing that helped me, he'd never had a meteorologist on, so he wasn't really sure how things would go. I think my favorite line was he said, how strong are the winds in Oklahoma? And I said, 300 miles per hour. And he said, 300 miles over there? And I said, well, just occasionally. And so, a lot of people really, the audience in there loved that. And so we shot the thing, and about a third of it was cut out because another segment ran along. There was a lot of other funny stuff, but it was a great deal. It took us to restaurants, and I don't know how they make any money spending money like that, but we certainly enjoyed it. It was a great opportunity, great fun.
We'll definitely put that up on our Facebook page as well, so you guys that are watching tonight, you can enjoy that clip as well. Well, Gary, we appreciate you coming on tonight. I know Joey has something to kind of close off, but there's two of your favorite sayings is a Big Town and Friday Night and a Loretta. So, I just don't think any show would be complete without you saying those.
Well, we'll have to we'll just pretend it's Friday. There's several parts of the set. One is just jump back, throw me down. It's Friday night in the Big Town, baby, all dressed up, no place to go. Other times it'll be jump back, throw me down Loretta. It's Friday in the Big Town, baby, and that's worked really well.
I love it. I
still put it on Twitter and Facebook because people want to see it. Now on Twitter Periscope the other night, I did the Friday night in the Big Town, and they liked it. I don't have that many viewers on that Periscope. The Periscope thing's great. You guys ought to be looking at that.
Yes, Periscope's awesome. We actually chased a storm a couple of weeks ago and put it on Periscope, and had like 60-some viewers, and it was really interactive and stuff. A lot of people asking questions, so it was pretty awesome tool to use.
It's going to change storm chasing a little bit.
I believe so as well. Yeah.
And for the better.
If we could just get it to landscape instead of the portrait view, but maybe that'll
come. There's a lens that you hook onto your iPhone. It was in the Wall Street Journal yesterday or the day before, and it's basically there's one that we can zoom in, another one is kind of like a fisheye look. But I don't know what it's called, but there's an app or there's a device you have to buy. It's not an app, and it snaps on there. So hey, maybe what you're looking for.
I'll definitely have to look that up. I'll have to look it up. Well, Gary, it's been fun. I know Joey's got something to kind of close us out, so Joey, I'll toss it to you.
All right. First thing I will tell you that story of Manhattan. My wife's an author. We went up for a book con, which is the biggest book sign in the world. And our first time ever being in New York City. We stayed in Newark. We took the train in, so we came into Penn Station. So my first look at New York City was walking up out of the basement of Penn Station into the middle of all those buildings. So being a guy from North Carolina who never made it further north than Philadelphia once, it was a pretty exciting scene. So I know how you felt there.
Yeah.
But my last question I want to ask, I want to wait to the end because I want to maybe end this on something serious. Plus, we were up against Weather Geeks tonight on the Weather Channel, so we got to have something good to draw in some viewers here. But but anyway, my one question was, you've told all these great stories, and they're all great. But if what is like the one moment in your career, maybe the one tornado, the one moment during a tornado, what was the one moment in your career that really stands out above the rest?
Wow, that's a tough question. A lot of great moments that stand out. Probably, well, really the moment that stands out wasn't the largest tornado. Is that one that came over the television station. The sound, the noise, the people running for the safer room. That one really stands out as a personal event. And the one of the 1986 when the whole sky was rotating behind the station, that was pretty memorable. But overall, it always comes back to May 3rd, 99. Ungodly number of tornadoes. 8 supercells just producing tornadoes like rabbits have rabbits. They said pow, 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 and they were big. And and what happened on that night? I made the decision to stay with the tornadoes and not the news coverage. And I don't think the news director ever recovered from that. So, but that day stands out very much. That's probably it's not a high point, but it was probably a low point, but it's the one that really stands out. It's how everything else is judged. More in 2013 was bad, and Canadian County was bad. We've had a lot of bad tornadoes. That event of May 3rd, 99 was just absolutely astounding. So all things are measured by that, I believe.
Wow.
I can tell you a story that stands out. When I was in I guess about 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I picked on Jimmy Brown. This is where you learn lessons. I picked on old Jimmy Brown, and Jimmy knocked me out with one hit. Knocked me off the stairs of the shop, down the stairs. Now that stands out. That stands out a lot. Jimmy, and the time I was a senior, I thought I'd try with Jimmy again, and it's a little bit better fight, but I think he got the best of me that time too.
One very last question from me, and then I'll kind of let it go. Ricky's just starting out in his TV career. Austin, like I said, is 15, and he's hoping to have a career in meteorology himself. What's the one piece of advice you can give somebody?
Oh gosh, be yourself. You got to learn to be yourself. You got to learn to look, because being on television, the advice to those guys is just like visiting with your neighbor and down the street. You're standing out in the yard, you're talking to them. And I see that. So it's being yourself, being personable, and what you want to get to is finally when you smile, they smile at home. If you nod your head, if you're really in tune with them, they're probably nodding their head just a little bit too. So it's being personal, being yourself, good information, but don't bore them. No one really cares about absolute vorticity or relative vorticity. They throw those things in occasionally to make it sound like I really know what I'm talking about. Well, that is not important. It's important that you get them to watch it. Mabel has to like it. Now, you see a lot of people on television right now that they're on the camera and they walk toward the camera. They're on the board. They walk to the camera, then they walk back. And they walk to the camera and they walk back. And so I told one recently, I said, now, I want you to get with your mama or your sister or your brother or your neighbor, and I want you to talk to them. And they said, well, I've done that. And I said, well, do you walk toward them and then walk back when you're talking to them? Because that's the key. You have to do what's normal. It's not normal to be talking. Like if Joey and I were standing here 6 feet across, it wouldn't be normal for me to walk toward him for 5 feet, turn around and walk back. And that's what they're doing. And the general manager said, yeah, the consultants say to do that. It's just be yourself. That's the key. Years ago, you don't need to be perfect. Years ago, when I first came on television, it went well. And the news director at that time, I've had about 40 different news directors. Talley was this guy's name. He went to the general manager and said, England doesn't have the best voice in the world and doesn't have the best diction and all that stuff, and we need to get him some lessons. And the general manager, a very perceptive man, said, you clean him up and you'll kill him. Because part of the appeal was just being an Okie, having fun. So my advice to those boys is be yourself. Learn the weather. You need the weather, but you're an entertainer too.
Thank you, Gary.
You bet. Ricky?
Well, Gary, as my last thing, I told you in Oklahoma, I'll tell you again here in front of all the viewers that we have. Growing up being a weather geek, always one of my idols. I remember reading news articles about you. I remember you being in the movie Twister. And then, as the age of YouTube came along, I remember looking at videos and the internet and hearing your talks from way back in. And I'm sure a lot of people have the same story as me. They grew up, seeing things from Gary. I wish I'd lived in Oklahoma. That would have I probably would have been tuned in every week, or every night. But that's my story. I'm glad you came on with us. I'll let Scotty wrap it up, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that this was one of my favorite shows because you really are one of my idols.
Joey, I appreciate that very much. That helps get by all this stuff. That's great. Appreciate it.
And Gary, I'll tell you, I didn't know much about you until I did a little research once I found out you was going to be a luncheon speaker, and getting to be able to talk to you and take pictures with you and just kind of conversate with you in Oklahoma City. You two have become one of my heroes, and I appreciate you taking your time out of a busy life and coming to spend about an hour and a half with us, some guys in North Carolina who love weather, and I just appreciate everything you've done for the weather enterprise. And like Joey said, if I was in Oklahoma City, I'd definitely be on Channel 9 watching you. So I appreciate all that you've done, and I appreciate just your contribution, and I appreciate you being such a great man that I can look up to, and hopefully sometime in my weather career be able to be half as good as you are.
You will be. Hey, I appreciate that very much. You come in, you'll be here in October, right?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
we're definitely gonna try to get out there in October, and if not, we'll be there back in February for the tornado conference.
All right, that sounds great, man.
Yeah, when I found out you were speaking at the Tornado Summit, I think I offered to cut off my right arm to make sure I got to go with the group for that show to be able to come out and see that. So.
Well, let me balance all this conversation. I used to call my mom and be after 10 o'clock show, and I said, "Mama, do you hear what I said on the show?" And she'd say, "Honey, I'm sorry, I fell asleep before we got to the weather."
Oh, too funny.
That sounds like my parents now, Gary, because I'm on at 7 in the morning. They're like, "We'll catch the replay later."
That's right. Yeah, you know how I feel. Yeah. You guys all take care, and I've really had fun being on, and you guys are a class act.
Well, we again appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can have you on some other time.
That'd be great. Hey,
always an open invitation. You ever have something you say, you know what, I want a platform to go talk about it? Well, ours is always open for you.
Okay, appreciate it, guys.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Gary, so much for coming on tonight.
Have a good one.
You too. And as Gary come on, another guy that Gary probably knows is going to be joining us next week, Mr. John Utek, up in the northern part of Oklahoma. He's going to be coming on next week to talk about being storm ready and how you can be storm ready and how your community can be storm ready. So we're looking forward to having John on as well. So guys, again, thank you for watching. We're going to Gary, can you still hear us? I forgot to tell him.
Okay, I got you, baby.
You still got us. Tell us tell our viewers how they can get in contact with you. Maybe on Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah, pretty easy. My Twitter is Gary, Garye. Last name is, so it's just Gary E. Twitter is actually Gary EOK. Gary EOK. And then my page that people can get on Facebook, I got a couple of them that are full, but I got one it's called Gary England, and you get on there, click on there, and we can converse that particular way too. So yeah, we can do that.
I totally forgot to have you promote your social media stuff, so I apologize for that. But and again, thanks guys for watching tonight. Remember, if you want to, you can watch the replay or as well download the iTunes. So everyone at the Carolinas Weather Group, we'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great week.